Let's talk about money in the board game industry, about the relationship between publishers and content creators, reviewers, and what makes them bias. I want to share with you the last 5 years of experience I have in this industry, some of the behind-the-scenes insight and knowledge that I have along the way, and start the conversation once again. Because about 4.5 months ago, I became the figurehead for the shills, the pay-to-play, the worst of the worst when it comes to content creators. We felt the retribution of an angry and, I think, rightfully frustrated audience resulted in 5,500 subscribers lost on the channel and, in many ways, the death of what I had envisioned Quackalope was going to be and could become. I've got a lot of thoughts around this. I've got a lot of questions to ask. I've got some framework and guidelines to place. But I'm going to try not to make this video too long or too overburdensome. I will be responding to comments in the comment section down below. So please swing down there, leave your comments, engage respectfully, and let me know your thoughts. I might do a follow-up of this down the road. For those of you who don't know, I'm doing a series of videos this week talking about the situation that happened, the accusations of blackmail, the Reddit thread that spiraled out of control. I have a video talking about my mental health. I have a video talking about personal growth and gratitude. I have a video talking about the mistakes I've made and trying to rectify and apologize for those. I have a video where I'm reading through the Reddit thread and responding to comments that people have made. And I have this video, Money in Board Game Media. All those will be linked down below. You can go watch any of those that you'd like if you want more context or more information or you're just interested to kind of dig into the drama. But, money in board game media. This is a long-standing conversation. It's been a conversation in the space well before I ever entered into the board game media space. There's been other channels that have been accused of being shills who have suffered the consequences of the pay-to-play type of game that some publishers and some content creators seem to share. And it's been one that is a hard question to navigate for anyone already in the industry, and especially for anyone newly entering the industry or those of us that have come up in the industry over the last 4 or 5 years. Everyone that I've talked with in the 10 to 50,000 subscriber range has struggled with the conflict of how to grow, how to make a profit, how to justify the time that it takes to create content and produce good quality work while trying to balance home and family and relationships and work and income and publishers. And I genuinely think that it is impossible in our industry for the relationship between reviewers and content creators and publishers to be severed. I could be wrong about that, and I would love an opportunity to be proven wrong. But I, at the moment, only have one example of a content creator that has effectively and efficiently done that very thing. And that one example has a lot of context that the average creator just won't come into the industry with. That's impossible for them to approach the conversation. We'll go through that. We'll be talking about Dice Tower, Shut Up and Sit Down, Rahdo, Watch It Played, Geek and Sundry, and No Rolls Barred. The channels that I consider the grandfathers or the biggest in the industry that set the precedent for how the rest of us interact. There's other channels that operate in this space, but I don't want to mention mid-size or small-size channels because I don't want to do damage or reveal things that are unknown. I won't be giving away secrets. I won't be pointing fingers or making accusations. I just want to examine with you, the audience, the model that exists, and try to either give you more information about why it is structured the way it's structured, what my experience as a content creator has been, or try to figure out a solution. Try to move forward in a positive way. It might not be with me. I'm under the impression that part of my brand has been damaged in a way that will be very hard to recover. Could be recovered in years, but will be very difficult. But I do know that there's going to be a variety of other publishers and other content creators watching my channel and learning from the mistakes that I've made. The conversation that blew up around me certainly gave some people insight into what not to do. So there'll be people in the future that make less mistakes than me, I hope. So it's a long-standing conversation. It's one that's hard to follow and hard to diagnose. But I think there's 3 core questions that need to be asked before we dive into specifics and dive into numbers. First, what makes someone biased in our industry? And leave a comment down below. Let me know your thought to these 3 questions before you hear my response. What makes someone biased in our industry, specifically? What would make you biased? We'll go through the answers, but some theories that are out online are getting a free game, receiving a product, might make you biased. Would it personally make you say something that you wouldn't normally say? Or at least be a little bit more favorable? Would potentially buying a game for a couple $100 make you biased against it because you're going to judge it harsher or more critically? Would getting money from a publisher make you biased? Even if you're not doing a review, a preview, or a how to play, or any of the other type of content, would you put on a little bit of a happier tone? Would you spend a little bit more time filming and working with that product? Maybe get the information that you're covering a little bit more accurate? Would that make you biased? Would a relationship, if your brother published a game, or a close friend of yours? What about a colleague, or an acquaintance, or someone from your community that you knew? Well, our industry is small enough that everyone kind of knows everyone. What about someone that you didn't like? Would that make you biased? So the first question, what makes someone biased in our industry? The second question, how does one make money in this space? It's perfectly fine to say that makes you biased so you shouldn't do it. But if you don't follow up with a response or an answer around how someone might be able to make a living in this space, then content creation, doing high quality, high production video work isn't a accessible or realistic career. And you might say it's a privilege to be able to make board game content. It shouldn't be a career. And I totally hear that argument. But on the other hand, for the first 4.5 years of my channel, which is about how long my channel has existed, I worked something like 80 to 90 hours a week on average. Maybe a little bit less if I'm averaging it out. I'm sure there was weeks there where I took time off or crashed and burned from burnout and didn't get anything done. Maybe 60 or 70 hours a week on average, with some weeks spiking up to 80 or 90 hours apiece. And in that time, I was producing the best stuff that I could. Learning games, playing games, making gameplays, filming, recording, editing, publishing, responding, engaging. And if you want that in our community, then there has to be profit. Somewhere, somehow. And there has to be significant enough profit that the person who's producing media and producing content chooses to stay in the hobby doing that, then leaving to another thing. There's a few different options here. Remember, answer the comments down below before you hear my response. I'll go back through these in just a second, but that money could come from sponsored content, could come from publishers, could come from fans and community members. That money could come from crowdfunding platforms, promos, selling games that get given to you for free, I suppose. That money could come from a larger channel, an affiliate, from hosting your own convention. Could come from a variety of sources. But you do have to have an answer for the content creator and for the publisher. As an audience, if you want someone to make good content that is unbiased, or at least limited biased, or openly biased, how then do they make money to justify the amount of time it takes for them to produce good quality content? And then finally, what can someone gain by lying to their audience? It's a very important question, a question that I hold personally dear, because the reality is, around the accusations of blackmail and manipulation, around the accusations of being a paid shill and being, the figurehead of the worst in the industry, I kept struggling with the conflict of, what do I gain by lying to you? By tricking you into buying a horrible game? I lose a fan if I sell you something that you don't like. So if someone is biased, if someone is a shill, what do they gain by tricking you or by deceiving you? What would you gain by tricking or deceiving someone on the other side of the camera? Okay, let me go back through these and respond as quickly but as directly as I can. What makes someone biased in our industry? In my opinion, money comes second to relationships in our industry. Our industry is tight-knit. The way that you grow as a content creator industry is by going to conventions, meeting with publishers, shaking hands, playing games. We're all about interpersonal relationships. And because of that, we become friends and friendly with the people and the publishers that we're working with. They offer to prototype and demo games on TTS. They call and have conversations. They send us cool things. They're hobbyists and people that work out of their garages, and they're cool and they're exciting, and they're sending us swords and they're flying us across the oceans to come visit them, and they're investing. And throughout that journey, we become friends with them. So friendship makes me more biased than anything else. I don't want to hurt a friend. I don't want to hurt someone that I know. I don't want to, dogpile on something, even if it's a bad game. I don't want to pop on camera and, tell people that there's this terrible thing that exists if I'm friendly with the person who made it. I'll be a little bit more cautious and a little bit more sensitive. It was one of the major mistakes that I made around the HEO coverage because I hadn't heard back from them. We'd worked with them in the past. We'd done preview coverage for them before. We had a fine relationship, but when it came down to it, I bought the game myself. I played it myself. I had not gotten a response back from the publisher, and the game was really difficult. The game was really difficult. And so, I didn't have the bias of being friends. I had the potential bias of working with them. It was one of the major mistakes I made, and one of the things I acknowledge in the apology video. But relationships in our industry make someone biased before money does. Then money certainly makes you biased. Certainly opens the door to being slightly more positive on a game or not putting out an accurate and thorough review. Because you want to put out a review that lets the audience know what the game is about. You want to be neutral. You want to be more in the middle. But you also want to highlight the good points and the nice points. It's one of the things that Rado gets complained at a lot. He approaches the industry by only covering things that he likes. He's open and public about that. And so, there's an audience of people that are very frustrated with his coverage because every game is the best. Every game is new. Every game has some amazing mechanic. The intro to every video talks about how great and awesome and awe-inspiring this thing is. But that's what he publicly does. That's a very open and straight approach that he takes on his channel. But the money that's involved certainly elicits some degree of bias there. Publishers don't want to invest or pay if a content creator doesn't like their game. Publishers don't want to invest or pay if a content creator repeatedly talks negative about their product. It's a very hard balance to strike. I know publishers have cut off content creators from covering their work because they were critical or negative or didn't get things 100% accurate on a previous title. And our industry is so small that you have to tiptoe around that. If you want to be thorough and critical, and you want people to still give you access to prototypes and previews and games to cover, or you want people to work with you, stepping on too many toes can absolutely knock you out of the running in the industry. There's enough people who they can take advantage of and get free work from, who are still trying to grow and still trying to expand in the hobby space. And there's reason to do free coverage, there's reason to do free work, absolutely. But there's enough people like that if they decide that you're on the blacklist, they don't have to come to your door. So, relationships first, money second. The question of board games. Does it feel awesome to get this thing that I love in the mail? Yeah, for sure. You get a game in the mail for free and you think you're on the top of the world, especially when you're a brand new content creator. You got 1,000 subscribers and people start sending you product and you absolutely feel biased about that. Because it's cool, because it's fun. You're a little bit more excited when you open things up, when you talk about things. It didn't cost you anything. You feel rewarded for the work that you've put in. So, yeah, I would say it shifts the conversation towards the positive. And publishers know that. I know publishers that'll send out games to everyone that asks, because sending out games is a good business investment. It's not that they, it's not that they do it begrudgingly. They think it's a waste of money or a waste of resources. Some publishers won't send a single game out to a single person because they don't view it as good marketing. But conversation's split here. So goodwill and a good relationship and money changing hands or board games changing hands definitely leads to some degree of bias. How do you mitigate that bias? On our channel, we've done a few things. We've tried to have an updated description telling you if it was paid content. We've always tried to hit the YouTube paid content button and had some type of verbal acknowledgement, although we haven't always been perfect at doing that early on or as directly as we should have. Along with that, we've tried to cover games in a variety of ways, in a variety of formats. For instance, if we get a preview video, that's a sponsored paid video, I'll for free try to do something like a gameplay video on the side. One, because it's added value to the publisher who's hiring me for the preview video, makes them feel good, gives them more coverage, gives their game more conversation. Two, because it's fun to play a game and talk about it for the audience. And three, because, and for me this is the most important thing, it gives the audience more context through which they can decide if a game is right for them or not. It's the whole concept. You don't have to be aggressively positive or aggressively negative or completely unbiased in any direction, as long as you provide the framework needed for an audience member to do what due diligence they need to do to decide if a game is going to be right for them or wrong for them. It's one of our core review formats here on the channel. The concept is that you provide information, you provide knowledge, and you try to do so accurately. Now, can you do that can you be critical without being negative? Absolutely. I can talk about a game being heavy or complicated, advanced, full of mechanics, prone to maybe a little bit of AP. I can show a gameplay where people are struggling to make decisions or where there's a lot of moving parts on the game. I can talk about, take that and laugh with West about how we completely screwed each other over. Comments and phrases and outlines like that let the audience know where this game falls in terms of what they're looking for. When I do a preview video, not only do I add extra context and extra information through additional videos, but I try to think through what are the core things that an audience member needs to know that are beyond my bias, that define the nature of this game, that'll help them decide if they think the game is going to be fun. Because that's what we're looking for. And I believe it is few and far between that I have pushed or shared or sold a game to someone on my channel who hasn't had accurate information and who hasn't enjoyed the game that they thought they were getting. It's a rare thing. And there's been situations in the past where we have turned down hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of contracts because I just didn't like the game. And I couldn't stomach selling it or showing it to an audience because I didn't think there was much redeemable about it. That has happened. And I've seen other content creators cover games, not being paid, I don't think, but cover games because they had a relationship and they kind of hedge around how the game might be palatable. So, what makes someone biased? How does one make money in this space? I do not believe it is possible with the current size of our industry to separate publishers and content creators in a way that is sustainable for the content creators to survive and continue making content unless they either have deep pockets, another job, or they do it only and solely as a hobby, which means the content they put out will be limited, will be lower quality, and will be less produced. You'll have less videos overall. So what do I mean? Well, let's look at this space. Let's look at the YouTube media space. How do you make money on YouTube? There's 3 core ways. You can make money through YouTube ad revenue. There you get paid a certain percent of a penny for every view you get. And so if you get millions and millions of views, you can rack up a decent amount of cash. Over the time here at Quackalope, over the 5 years that we have been doing this channel, I checked the number, I believe it's something like $52,000. So, over the 5 years I've been doing the channel, I've earned right around $10,000 per year, with that skewing higher towards our higher subscriber numbers. Right, at the early stage of the channel, we were making absolutely nothing. The first year and a half, YouTube paid us not a penny. Through the middle, when we were having a lot of growth and a lot of viewership, and we were putting out daily videos, which is a lot of work, it ended up burning me out. Through that middle section, we were making anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500 a month, which is not that's nothing to sneeze at. That's good, not for the amount of work that we were putting in, but that's not nothing. And right now, we're making about $500 to $600. We're putting out less videos, we're getting less views. We still have a good core community, but if we put out daily videos, we of course will earn more. I've seen numbers from other channels. There are some that are skewed higher on that scale. They handpick and place ads in specific locations that let them get a little bit more bang for their buck, or they post a lot of videos to get a lot of views. There's channels that just have a swell of numbers, historic videos like Dice Tower, where they earn something like $300,000, $350,000 a year. They showed this on video at one point in one of their behind-the-scenes videos, but they earn a couple $100,000 a year through YouTube ad revenue, but they have a historic catalog where they're getting millions of views from having a ton of videos. And they put out multiple videos a day. So you can make money through YouTube. You can make money through Patreon, through crowdfunding, through support. That's one of the options that you have. There are very few, if any, channels who are able to actually survive what they do off of their Patreon community. I do know that there's some hobbyist channels, miniature painting and fan-created stuff that actually make a decent amount of money through that type of Patreon support. I don't know of YouTube channels that make enough where they could just be YouTube full-time. The highest that I have seen would be No Rules Barred. They have just over 6,000 Patreon backers. So they're earning something maybe $20,000 or $30,000 a month off of their Patreon specifically. But they also come with some other context that we'll put in place. They're doing it the best, though. And the production value that they have, the amount of characters and staff and crew that they have, I still don't know that what they earn would be enough to actually run the operation. There's probably money somewhere else as well. But it very well could be. It very well could be that is the one example that we can point towards. But again, there's other contexts we have to go through. Patreon is an option. We range anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month on Patreon. And again, it's nothing to sneeze at. Between Quackalope, YouTube, and Patreon, over the course, over our best year, we would have been making maybe $2,200 to $2,500 a month before taxes, so $15,000 to $18,000 a month after taxes. And so you're looking at something like $30,000 a year. It's not a lot for the amount of work that goes in. It's less than the amount of cameras and camera equipment that I have. It's less than what it costs to actually run this show. So, what's the other way that YouTube channels make money? The other way that YouTube channels make money is through sponsorship. Now, you could go get a sponsorship from Coca-Cola or from Mercedes-Benz. Depending on the type of channel you have, you get sponsorships associated with the audience that you have in front of you. Of course, the nature of how advertising works is that whoever your audience is, people who sell the product that your audience is likely to buy want to get in front of that audience. So they'll run ads through Google in front of your YouTube videos, video games and apps and cryptocurrencies pop up in front of all of our YouTube videos trying to convince you that you should go jump into the digital gaming space. But you have to have a significant number of views to attract sponsorship. There's a sponsorship that exists out there for some t-shirt company, Into the AM, I think it is. And they offer something like $100 to $150 a month for you to shout them out multiple times and stick a link down in your video description and bug your audience constantly about how cool my t-shirt looks. That's nothing. But it's because our viewership, our audience, isn't big enough to justify big price tags. Whoever the person that is paying for the ad is has to be able to reciprocate or reallocate. They have to get more than they're spending. So, in the board game space, the audience that we have, the most valuable marketplace, is the board game audience. It's the publishers. When we first started content creation and taking packages and doing sponsored ads, it was on the edge or a few months into 2020. I'd lost my entire photography career. We had about 10,000 subscribers on the channel, a little bit less when we first started. And we started selling packages at $300 a piece. More than what Into the AM would be offering me now at 42,000 subscribers. And that's not bad. Still doesn't cover the amount of time and the amount of work and the amount of effort that goes into it. But for a channel with 8,000, 9,000 subscribers, that is a stabilizing force. Over the course of the next few years, we grew that number to somewhere around 12 to about 2,400 per video package. That includes gameplays, previews, they all kind of fall within that range. Now, I come from the media world outside of the board game industry, and for the amount of work we're doing, and for the eyes and audience that we're getting, and for the production that we're putting in, that number, 12 to 24, is still way below what general industry standard rates would be. But our industry is scrappy, and it doesn't have a lot of money it's throwing around, and the publishers that are willing to spend and willing to invest are a little bit wary of putting too much into one pot. So that makes sense. So you work with multiple publishers, and you do a lot of projects, and you work your butt off, and you try to grow, and you try to stabilize. I think around our third year running Quackalope, we might have hit somewhere in the $60,000 to $70,000 range for the whole channel before taxes. Over the course of this last year, with 4 employees on the team, I think we were somewhere in the $220,000 range. If anyone's curious, on the back of the fallout about 4.5 months ago, we've lost, of course, all of our employees, and I think we'll probably be somewhere in the $50,000, maybe $55,000 range this next year. I might be wrong, but we've taken a big hit. We've lost a lot. So those are the 3 ways that people make money in this space. Now let's look at the kingpins of the board game industry and some important context when we talk about how the board game industry works and how YouTube as a whole works. Dice Tower, Shut Up and Sit Down, Watch It Played, Rahdo, Geek and Sundry. Those are the litmus tests for YouTube in our gaming industry that I'm using. I'm sure I'm overlooking people, but those are some of the biggest channels that exist in our space. They're also some of the oldest channels that exist in our space. Dice Tower and Watch It Played, I believe, starting around the same time, each around the 250 to 300,000 subscriber mark. Shut Up and Sit Down slightly above them, I believe. I don't know. I haven't checked the numbers as recently. But how do these people make money, and what type of guidelines do they set for us in the industry to follow? The people who are trying to grow a business, trying to be as successful as possible, trying to enter this space and be competitive. Because the nature of YouTube is, if you had a head start, you have eyes, you have an audience, you have grandfathered content. By the nature of being some of the first into this bucket, you get an extra 100,000 subscribers just off the bat. Now, I'm not saying they don't deserve that. They were the first here. They certainly do, and the work they've done has been essential and critical. But it doesn't answer the question about the problem that we're having now, which is an influx of new content creators trying to figure out how to exist in this space. So, none of these publishers, none of these content creators have indicated that there is a way to be free from publisher influence or publisher reliance and run a successful business. The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower, of course, separates previews with Mark Streed from Tom Vassell. So Tom is free to review everything however he wants, and Mark Streed does his previews, and a portion goes to him and a portion goes to Dice Tower. It's kind of split up that way. And that's all hunky-dory. That's great. But remember, money isn't the only way that you become biased in this industry. Now, am I saying Tom is biased or the framework of Dice Tower is biased? No. But they're also one of the biggest, if not the biggest, reviewer networks in our industry. They raise money through Kickstarter. They raise money through crowdfunding sites. They raise money through fan support sites. They raise money through live streams. They raise money through sponsored videos. And reviews or previews are not the only sponsored videos they do. They do live streams, they do gameplays, they do showcases, they come visit and travel around. And they get paid for all of those different appearances. On top of that, almost every publisher in the industry has sent them some type of promo or product. They sell these at conventions. They host multiple conventions around the country, and they use those publishers, those free publishers' products, as a way to generate attention for the Kickstarter. The backbone of everything the Dice Tower does is tied directly to publishers. So as a model for brand new content creators that are coming into the space, the Dice Tower sets the framework that if you're going to grow in this space, you have to work with publishers. Now, I do think that the way they have it structured, where they've separated reviews and previews from Tom, is a smart way to do it, but that requires you to have a team and have infrastructure. Something that Quackalope was on the verge of having, but wasn't ever really to the point of being able to accomplish. There's some other channels that are experimenting with this model, successfully or unsuccessfully, we're just not sure yet. So, the Dice Tower, intrinsically tied with publishers and publisher relationships. Shut Up and Sit Down. I hear you. Possibly one of the more unbiased channels in the space. Shut Up and Sit Down is a comedy show first and foremost, right? They do really good reviews, but they're overwhelmingly entertaining. That has drawn a lot of attention to them and made them wildly successful in our space. But if I'm following them as a model, it's very hard to replicate the charm and the grace and the humor that they bring to the table. Comedy in the board game space is a hard thing to perfectly execute on. Along with that, Shut Up and Sit Down is not entirely free from publishers either. They host their own convention, they do their own live stream, they advertise prototypes and products on that or in adjacency with that series. They sell booths and they sell booth space, and they also get flown across the country to come to conventions and to show up on tour, and they get paid to do all that as well. They're, of course, in relationship with a variety of publishers because of this convention circuit, and they've published games as well in the past. They've stepped in it at least one time that I can acknowledge, where they advertised a game that was going to be a Kickstarter, and the audience felt very betrayed by them. I think that was fair on the audience's part, and I think their response was, as far as I can tell, well received overall. They are less tied to publishers than the vast majority of content creators. But they also don't just do Shut Up and Sit Down or just do this content creation as their full-time job. Many of them work in a variety of aspects, whether it's doing their own creative projects, working other jobs, or running and starring in other YouTube channels. Shut Up and Sit Down isn't just Shut Up and Sit Down. So the model might be free from publishers, but it's certainly not free from a divided set of interests. This is why you don't see as many videos coming out as often from them. This is why they share the workload between a multitude of content creators, where they all only have to put out a little bit at a time over the course. And, of course, they have a fan community, and they get support from their fans as well. I'm not sure how significant that support is, but it is there. And I think it's probably a bigger percentage than what you find in most other areas of the industry. Shut Up and Sit Down could be and should be a model to follow. And the one channel that I think is breaking the ropes is following their lead. Rahdo. Rahdo has a policy of doing no negative reviews. We already talked about this a little bit, but it's worth mentioning. Maybe that's the way that I should have approached my channel, or other content creators should consider approaching their channels. Yeah, we do previews, we do sponsored gameplays, we do how-to-plays, but we don't do anything that we don't like. We like everything we cover. So if you're coming to my channel, expect that I'm going to like it. But you can see that an audience over time has become worn out from that type of content. The fact that the top of every video is a positive statement about how this game is the best thing that's happened to the industry since sliced bread makes it a very exhausting thing to watch. It works for one-off marketing projects and sometimes works for a series of videos. But overall, the structure of never being critical and never being negative is a hard thing to adjust to. It is a model, however, that works. But it's a model that has to exist because Rahdo, to run his business, has to be tied to sponsorship from publishers. Watch It Played. Watch It Played, at least Rodney Smith, doesn't do reviews at all. I don't believe the other content creators publicly on his channel do reviews either. And they're doing some of the best content right now in this space. Very entertaining, very tied together. But the entire channel is built off of good, positive relationships with publishers that they protect with a vengeance. And it's built off of this framework of doing how to play videos, teaching videos, doing instructional videos, preview videos, featuring games, and highlighting and showcasing the industry. Valuable content, worthwhile content, but still, by nature, tied and necessitates a biased, positive relationship with publishers in order to produce the content. Of course, it's not review content, so that biasing might be totally permissible. But it doesn't set a model or a precedent that allows content creators who are coming into the space to figure out how to grow, how to succeed. New content creators have to ask themselves the question, am I going to be better at how to play videos than Rodney Smith? Am I going to be more interesting, more engaging, be able to succeed well enough over the course of the next 7 years that I might be able to get enough attention that publishers start hiring me over him? If the answer is no, which I think in almost every single degree it is, they have to find a different pathway or they have to go down a different venue. Whether that's doing Kickstarter previews, talking about new products, shouting about games they love, or working with publishers to get previews and prototypes and early coverage of games in, because that's where the eyes are in our industry. We did a series a while back about the 100 classic board games on BGG. We started from 100, we were going down the list. And compared to our preview coverage about new games and new topics and things that we just released, our industry is cult of the new through and through. Anything old, anything historic, anything classic, anything out of the current conversation sphere on YouTube gets horrible views. So for a channel to invest in that type of content means that they're sacrificing their opportunity to grow, because YouTube only responds and grows in accordance with how successful your views and viewership are being. So if you want to be successful in the industry, getting access to early and exclusive stuff is important. So, Watch It Played. They don't do reviews. They are still tied to publishers. Geek and Sundry. Before Geek and Sundry expired, this was the single biggest board game network in the industry. They had a few different hosts, and they had, a juggernaut of the RPG world. I think Critical Role started through them. I could be wrong about it. I think so, though. And so, Geek and Sundry, before it died off, charged tens of thousands of dollars for coverage on their channel, depending on the type of coverage and what you were doing. And I would argue that it potentially might be justifiable. It's a California studio. It costs a lot to produce, and they had 1 million plus subscribers. But they charged a lot. Enough that the marketing budget for a publisher or a board game would be entirely exhausted by going to them. And I've seen publishers spend money in that direction and fail, which was heartbreaking to see, because that's a lot of debt to suddenly be in. Geek and Sundry was the biggest in our space when it existed, and it was intrinsically tied. There was no way for it to have the business model it had without being tied financially to publishers, paying top dollar, obscene prices for the sake to be featured in front of the widest audience they could find. And finally, the channel that has some caveats but might be breaking this mold, the first one that I've seen that has a chance of actually redefining the industry, although with the caveats it's really hard for anyone to follow in their footsteps, is going to be No Roles Barred. With 6K Patreon backers, they are doing incredible. They're growing faster than any other channel in the industry. They're getting more views. They're getting more engagement than any other channel in the industry. They are setting the precedent. They are taking the mantle that what was it? Will Wheaton had laid down. They're taking the mantle from tabletop and doing entertaining, engaging, active content. Their stuff's great. Like, absolutely top notch. So, you should go check them out. You should watch them. The caveats that need to be put in place to fully understand how they fit into this model of publisher relationships is that I haven't seen evidence of them taking directly sponsored video content. And if they did, I am sure they would acknowledge and let everyone know. However, they are already YouTubers. They come with a YouTube network backing them. They come with a wrestling channel and a variety of other spin-offs that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers already. A nerd culture in and of itself. They're celebrities, D-list or D-list or Z-list celebrities in the YouTube sphere, but they have an audience that followed them over, that supports them because they like watching, because they're engaging and entertaining. And this doesn't undermine the quality of content they're doing at all, but for anyone new coming into this space, who's doing it on their own, who aren't professional actors, who don't already have the backing of successful ideas, successful thumbnails, successful titles, successful marketing spends and pushes, you can't compete with that. There's no way to model yourself to have the growth and the explosive interaction that they have had. They stand out among the crowd, but it's because they came in with knowledge and experience and professionalism. And they're doing great. But also, I would venture to guess that as time moves forward, we will see them take, as well, sponsorships. Because if they can charge top dollar, why wouldn't they? They're a business. They're run by a marketing agency. They're designed and structured to be as successful as possible. And in our industry, until they are getting millions of views per episode, the most successful way for them to monetize the views that they have would be to take sponsorship from publishers. They might not. It might be too big of a risk in our industry. It might be a betrayal of values. They might be run by an agency that's okay and content with a really healthy Patreon community and the YouTube ad revenue. Like I said, I think they're making maybe $25,000 to $30,000 a month on Patreon at the moment, which is outstanding. But for them to run and produce what they're creating, I don't think that covers the tab. They've got a lot of hosts, they've got a lot of episodes, and they put a lot of time and effort into the product that they're making. So, it's a breakdown of some of the grandfather content creators in our space and how they make money, how they've monetized our industry. So, what can someone gain by lying to their audience? That's the third question that has to be asked. If you're not okay with sponsored, biased content, if you're not okay with publisher content creator relationships, and you don't have a solution for me for how publishers and content creators can separate and be unbiased news sources that allow you, the audience, to consume things, then you have to ask yourself the question. Everyone that wages a war against the local content creator who's trying to grow in this space, and yeah, in some ways I'm talking about myself, but in many ways I'm talking about many others. What does someone gain by trying to trick you or trying to lie to you? Is it money that they gain? Because there's not a lot of money to be made in this industry. There's some, certainly. You might be able to make a career, but, our heyday was about $220,000 paying for 4 people. That doesn't include flying people in, hosting people, paying for taxes and bills and all the other stuff that mixes in. It sounds like a lot of money, but when you divide it up, it isn't. So, what's the framework? What does someone gain by tricking you, or by deceiving you, or by lying to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, I've talked a bit about our growth. I'm going to go through quickly our structure. I have it written down here, and then that's the video. That's the initial conversation. I'd love to continue this, because right now we're at a stage of my channel where we're just trying to move forward. We don't know what that looks like. We don't know what that's going to be, but we're trying. So like I said, we monetized when we were around a few months into 2020. I lost all of my photography gigs and contracts because the pandemic had hit. We were just under 10K subscribers, and we monetized at $300 per video at the very beginning. Of course, that's flexible, and that changed up and down slightly as time passed, but that was the thing. When we first started monetizing in the industry, it was standard practice for publishers. It was standard practice, and still might be, for content creators to charge first-time publishers. I specifically made a policy at Quackalope that was something we were not interested and not willing to do. Have we ever charged first-time publishers in the past? Sure, we certainly have. It depends on, of course, if the person is an experienced content creator already, if they've already put out games through other publishers, how ingrained into the hobby they are, and whether or not we're aware that they're a first-time publisher in the first place. But the core framework, our core policy, and the thing that people can hold us to is that when we are aware, or when we are aware that someone is a new or first-time publisher, or we are aware that someone is still trying to recoup the costs of production and development, we do not charge them. I don't like taking money from people who are just trying to make a dream come true. And when we first entered the hobby space, and it could still be true to today, publishers made a significant amount of money off of charging top dollar to brand new publishers who just wanted to make their dreams succeed. So keep that in mind as we continue. Over the next 2 years, we grew to 1,200 to 2,400, lower than commercial industry standards should be for the amount of time and work that went into produce video, but about average for the board game hobby space. Some people are lower, some people are higher, and it ranges based off viewership and based off your relationship and personality on camera. On YouTube, we make next to nothing. For a 10,000 views, we make about $30 to $35. And most of our videos get anywhere from 1 to 5,000 views. We're talking maybe $6 to $20, not even that, $6 to like $15 for the vast majority of the content that we have out on the channel. We're putting out daily videos. That's still not enough to survive on. We, as a channel, and most channels that I know of, have constantly had to reinvest in order to keep up. We've hired an editor, we've flown people in, I've hosted people in my own house, I slept on a couch for the first 4 years so that I have a bedroom and a space to film everything in. We've made dramatic sacrifices to grow and build what we have, and that's taken a lot of money back. I mean, a single camera like this is a Lumix S5. It's a $2,500 body. It's a $400 or $500 lens. You've got a memory card in here. You've got batteries, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those lying around. We were hoping to have 7 or 8 by this point. You've got lights and cameras and audio equipment and editing computer and a lot that goes into actually producing good quality content. So with all the money that we've made, we are right now still in debt to the channel. Maybe I've managed things irresponsibly. Maybe I've hired people I shouldn't have hired. Maybe I've spent money where and hosted people where I shouldn't have spent money and I shouldn't have hosted people. But that's part of the nature of this. I know many a content creator who have put money into their first camera and their first editing computer or their second or third camera, and they haven't ever yet recouped the cost of those devices. So you have to ask the question, how is someone to get started? How is someone to succeed? How is someone to see a pathway towards making this sustainable, other than just a pathway towards making it a hobby? Because a hobby can't be 60 hours a week as a hobby is irresponsible. It's horrible. If you're relying on other people to provide for you, it's manipulative. So, money in board games. Those are my thoughts. That's what I've learned along the way. Hopefully this gives the audience some insight. Hopefully this helps other content creators frame what they want to do. There are a lot of options out there. I'm sure more people will invent new ones. I have yet to see someone who's been able to break the mold when it comes to monetizing our space in a way that satisfies both the audience, all of the audience, and the publishers, and pays them enough to justify the work and the time that they're putting in. As far as Quackalope and what we're doing when it comes to monetization going forward, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know what the future looks like yet. We still have a good reputation in the industry. We have a good reputation with publishers. We have a good reputation with content creators. But, we have to tiptoe and figure out and feel our way around and see what allows us to continue and what allows our audience to know where we stand and where our relationships lie. I thought about putting a number on Patreon and being like, if we hit this, we will demonetize. We will demonetize YouTube and take no money from publishers. If you've made it to this point in the video and think that'd be a fun thing to do, let me know. I don't know what that number would have to be, but I thought about doing that. But the reality is we wouldn't hit it. We wouldn't reach it. There's just not that. There's not that wealth of support. It's just we have a small hobby. We have a very niche audience, and so there's not 100,000 people out there that want to throw $1 your way. It just doesn't exist. All right. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Hopefully that was interesting to some degree, or at least insightful. But whatever the case, we'll see you later.